Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Wonderfully Made podcast. This is your host, Fifi Buchanan. So today I want to talk about sleep because sleep is so important to our overall health. And I'm going to be walking you through 12 simple rules I follow for a good sleep routine. I personally feel like I am still perfecting my routine, and my optimal amount of sleep is around 8.5 hours. Right now, I'm averaging just under 8 hours, so I'm getting efficient sleep, but there are some days where I'm getting a little less, and it's kind of like taking my average down. So just giving you that little transparent update, but very excited because I really don't know how I survived my college years and graduate school years where I was really just averaging like 5 hours of sleep per night. It was rough. But the first one is one that you may have heard me mention before, and that is having a bedtime. And thank goodness for technology. It's sort of a blessing and a curse because it can be very addicting, but I do have a bedtime set up on my phone. And so I get an alert to start my wind down process. And my phone also goes into sleep mode so that I won't get any notifications that may disturb me as I'm trying to go into my descent to sleep. Now, I really don't have my notifications on my phone anyway, but it just really blocks the phone calls from coming through. And so for me, 30 minutes is good. Most of the time I've already showered like a couple hours before bed. So really what my little alarm is helping me to do is to start to shut down all of my lights, and just start to like go and do my skincare routine and my dental routine and all of that, and then like make my way to bed. My next rule is don't work out too late. Now, if you're listening to this and you feel like working out intensely an hour before bed gives you like the best sleep of your life, by all means, keep doing it. But there are some of us who prefer morning workouts or midday workouts or even like a 3 p.m. workout over a 7 or 8 p.m. workout, because what happens is our body temperature is up from the workout and sometimes even our heart rate for a little bit, and it makes it hard to feel calm enough to feel sleepy. Now, occasionally I will take a yoga class in the evening, and we're talking vinyasa flow, so it is pretty intense, but I don't do it that often, and I try to do like my entire nighttime routine before I go. So that way when I get home, I am simply changing, showering, and like heading to bed. That's the only time I will make the exception is for yoga, but I'm definitely not taking like an 8 p.m. spin class because it just makes me so like alert and awake in a way that would be super helpful if it's like 8 a.m., but not helpful if it's 8 p.m. Another one is to not eat too late. And I remember for a really long time, people having this rule of like, don't eat after 5 p.m. And I always thought it was so ridiculous because you don't know my bedtime. Some people don't even get home from work until 6, 6:30, 7. And so saying don't eat too late is a little general, but you have to personalize it for you. So if you go to bed at like 9:30, then eating a quick snack at 9:15 might not really work for you. It's another thing similar to working out where, to me, food can kind of perk you up, and it can also maybe lead to indigestion if you're just like going to lie down after eating, food that takes a bit of energy to digest. And then it's a balance because you might also find yourself hungry an hour before bed and think, oh, I'm not supposed to eat too late. But you also shouldn't go to bed on a completely empty stomach because that will usually really affect the quality of your sleep. So I guess a better way to say this would be to be mindful of your eating schedule, because there are certain foods that may keep you awake. There are certain foods that could upset your stomach or be hard to digest. But if you find that like, okay, it's 2 hours before bed and I'm still hungry and I don't know what to do, you could do like me. I sometimes will do like half of a banana and cashew butter, and it's enough to make me feel kind of full, but not heavy, and then I can sleep just fine. The next one is calming fragrances. I am a lavender girly, so I have lavender essential oil that I put in a diffuser, and I usually turn that on about 30 minutes before bed and let it run for 1 hour, and I'm usually sleeping when it turns back off. I also have a room spray that can also work for a fabric spray. So I will use those. And honestly, it's one of those things where I don't know if it's a placebo effect or not, but guess what? It feels like it works, and it's a pretty inexpensive thing, and it feels very luxurious. So I love doing that before bed. Your number 5 is perfect room temperature. For some people, they like to sleep like a polar bear. Some people like it to be warm. You got to figure out what works for you. But what I find is if my body is overheated, I do not get quality rest. I have trouble falling asleep. I have trouble staying asleep. And then sometimes I get to that point where my clothing is all damp from sweat, and it's just not a good time. And so finding that perfect temperature where you feel comfortable and you're not freezing, that's really going to help you to fall into that deep quality of sleep. My number 6 is comfortable sheets. And a lot of these are all about like customizing what works for you. Some people like a thinner sheet. Some people like the heavier jersey type sheets and no comforter. It's really what works for you, but be mindful of body temperature. And then also like, does the fabric feel a little irritating to your skin, or is it soft? Just make sure it's something where you're comfortable, so it's not one more thing to kind of mess with your senses when your body is trying to comfortably fall asleep. Number 7 is very important, and that is journaling. Now, you don't have to go and buy a journal and, go the old school way, but if you like, that's great. And you can maybe keep it somewhere near your bed and you can write down things, and it's really up to you, how you do it. Lately, I've been doing a lot more voice notes for journaling. It's just a chance for me to use my voice, sometimes even from maybe situations that happened during the day where I didn't feel like I had a voice, or I didn't know how to organize my thoughts to stand up for myself or to ask further questions. I will journal and I get a chance to hear my voice out loud processing. And so then I don't have all of those racing thoughts before I'm trying to sleep. But journaling is up to you. It doesn't have to be this deep emotional connection on paper or digitally. You could literally journal and be like, here are the things I did today. Here are the things I need to do tomorrow. Because I'm guessing a lot of adults, the racing thoughts have to do with all the stuff they didn't finish today and all the stuff they have to do tomorrow. That's kind of what happens. So if your journal is like half grocery list, half thoughts, that is up to you. No rules on journaling. Number 8 is not watching upsetting things before bed. And I think for me, I'm not as big of a television person as I used to be. And it's pretty common sense for me not to like watch the news 10 minutes before bed or turn on a true crime show. But where I sometimes fall short is scrolling through social media as I've gotten into bed and I feel like, oh, I have 17 minutes before I need to fall asleep. I've got some time. Let me get to scrolling. The problem with that is that I don't have control over what is going to pop up. And so if the topic is upsetting or confusing or disturbing, my mind is going to desire an outlet and a way to process. And I don't always get to decide when that begins to happen. And so shutting down from any source that is going to possibly put upsetting content in front of me is very critical. Number 9 is playing music all night if needed. And that's because there are nights, no matter how many of these rules you follow, there are going to be nights where you feel like nothing is working. I'm still so wide awake and I'm restless and I just don't know what else to do. Well, that's when I will put on like healing frequency, or I will put on some instrumental music or classical. Not the upbeat classical that I use to work during the day, but something that's a little more sleepy time type music. Or I put on a sleep podcast, sleep story, and I will put it on for like to set to turn off for 4 hours or have it on the whole night. And what this allows me to do is to truly rest. Even if I'm not quite able to fall asleep, it helps me to be able to still lie there in bed and say, my body is still resetting and restoring, even if I'm still awake. Number 10 might be an unexpected one. And number 10 is staying hydrated throughout the day. I do not know the scientific reason behind this, aside from our body is made up mostly of water. If I do not get enough water, I wake up as if I have a hangover. It's so bad, and I feel like it carries out. And I remember going to a wellness center and them telling me, if you get dehydrated, it takes 72 hours sometimes to restore hydration to the proper balance. And so what I find, there's some connection with that hydration and quality of sleep. But the other thing is, and I've been guilty of this, sometimes I've got my 64-ounce water bottle and I realize I've got 3 more cups to drink, and now it's 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I'm doing like cramming before a final, and I'm trying to just hurry up and drink all the water so I can, check that box to say I drank all my water. But what that does is that has me in a position where now I feel like I have to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. So staying hydrated throughout the day has many benefits. Overall, my whole quality of my body, my joints, my muscles, less headaches, everything feels better with more sleep, more water, and it helps with sleep. Number 11 is incorporating stretching. Even after years of sports in high school, dance well into adulthood, and being a yogi for like the past 20 years, I hate stretching sometimes, especially when it's just me on my own. So what I've been doing is guided stretching through different apps or through YouTube, and I will find a guided stretch for a particular muscle group or full body, and I will commit to, okay, this one's a 10-minute one, this one's a 15-minute one. And what that does is removes a lot of the muscle knots and tension, especially when I incorporate my foam roller with it as well. And that allows me to sleep better, because then I don't have aches and pains and this difficulty of finding a comfortable position to be in. And that brings me to my last one, which is sleep position. I don't know if there's anyone out there who has experienced sleep paralysis, but it is the worst feeling ever. If you don't know what it is, it's basically when you are asleep and your body is fully paralyzed, and you're now coming to wakefulness and your body has not caught up. And so it is still paralyzed as if you were in that deep REM sleep. And what I find is if I sleep on my back, sleep paralysis is a very high possibility, as are nightmares. So even though I think sleeping on my back feels comfortable, the nightmares, they gotta go. So I usually sleep on my side. But I have a whole technique for the proper pillows for side sleep and all of that to make sure I'm entirely comfortable. And it really helps me to also not wake up in pain, especially in my neck from like sleeping in a strange position. But you have to figure out what works for you. So many of us have different ailments and conditions and just preferences. So do what works for you. And I always love saying this, baby yourself. Make sure that you take good care of yourself and that you keep good sleep hygiene. I feel like there are so many parents who are so concerned and focused on their child and their bedtime routines and getting them to bed and preparing them for bed. And then it comes to their own routine and it's like, all right, let me go and try to do a bunch of stuff around the house and I'll pass out when I can. But I think that sleep hygiene that babies and toddlers are, so meticulously placed into a routine for, adults need it as well. So out of all these 12 tips, I would love to know which ones you already do and which ones you're going to try to implement. Leave a comment on my Instagram if you can. It's Wonderfully Made Pod. And that's it for the show. Thanks so much for listening.